Greetings to you. I'm Brother James Muhammad, a student in the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and your host for this week's segment of Closing the Gap broadcast. We want to welcome all of our viewing and listening audience, those of you who are regular participants and sharing with us your time in this broadcast, and those of you who we hope are there, who are there for their first or second or third time. We welcome all of you. But for those of you who are regular participants in the show, you know that we always invoke the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due, the Lord of the worlds. We thank Almighty God Allah for his merciful and prophetic intervention in our affairs in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, and we thank him for raising up from our midst his messenger, Messiah, the exalted Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, through whom we have been given our beloved and blessed Redeemer. And I refer to him as my personal Savior. The man of whom I speak is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It is to these men that we are deeply grateful and highly honored for the great privilege and opportunity to establish this platform from which and through which we can share some of the profound messages of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan as represented through their students, the ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, one of whom we are very, very, very happy to announce will be with us today. We are in anticipation of our dear brother, student minister Abel Muhammad, who is a very prolific helper to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and, of course, the Nation of Islam, as he represents the Mexicano people or the Latino people of the Nation of Islam. And so we are in great anticipation of his arrival, and we, by the grace of Allah, anticipate a very lively, very, might be provocative, but very lively, instructive, and inspirational and informative discussion dealing with this subject matter. And that subject matter is, of course, a 150-year-old overdue apology. Is it enough? Or is it too little, too late? And for those of you who have been following the news, you know that President Biden has decided to make an apology to the Native American people. We're going to get into exactly why he feels that at this time he wants to make an apology, but we'll allow our guests to arrive and get into the meat of the subject matter. We are accompanied by, as we are blessed to be, our dear co-hosts, our dear sister Stala Muhammad, the managing editor of the Final Call newspaper, the greatest paper that has ever been published by the greatest publisher. And of course, our dear brother, student minister Chad Muhammad of Muhammad Mosque number 47 in Tampa, Florida. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you both again. Sister Stala.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Good to see you, student minister James, student minister Chad, and of course, excited to be back on another edition of Closing the Gap with such a, like you said, interesting, timely topic this evening. So I as well am anticipating the arrival of our brother, student minister Abel Muhammad.
There he is.
Share with us this timely and important topic. And as usual, brothers and sisters, like I always state, As we dialogue this evening, as we hear from our brother, please make sure any questions that you would like to relay to Student Minister Abel Muhammad, that you type those questions in the chat. And inshallah, God willing, we will get through as many of them as possible. And with that, I will yield the floor to Student Minister Chad Muhammad.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you. And assalamu alaikum, family.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'm too just excited about this topic of discussion, which is very timely. Good to see you, Student Minister, Brother Abel, special guest with us. Let's make sure that we're sharing. And for those who haven't subscribed yet, please go to our Facebook page and also the YouTube page. But let's share this as we're tuning in, and let's look for a great show and have your questions ready. And for those that as we get started, and it might be something that may come up, formulate it so we could get it going and answer all the questions, God willing, like Sister Starla say. So I'm ready. We can get the show on the road.
All praises due to Allah. Very, very good. Welcome, Brother Student Minister Abel. Wonderful to see your smiling face. You look very royal in that unique bow tie. Praises due to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. It's good to see our brothers and sisters once again here from Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, and our beloved Sister Starla, our beloved brothers in the ministry class, Brother Chad and Brother James Muhammad. It's an honor to be back with you all again at such a time as this to discuss so much that is happening right now, and hopefully we can help our brothers and sisters, regardless of whatever your belief system is, through the teachings and the lens of guidance, divine guidance from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We pray that we're able to successfully convey to you that guidance, which you and I can put our trust and faith in, so that we may properly see what is happening, know the truth of what is happening, and act accordingly for the benefit of ourselves and our people.
All praises due to Allah. Wonderful opening statement. I must say, if truth be told, and of course, we're all about the truth, this was a kind of a last minute show, and I appreciate so much our dear student minister accommodating me. I had planned to replay one of our popular broadcasts because I hadn't a guest until I saw the news wherein President Biden decided to offer an apology to the Native American people. And I said, wow, that would be a wonderful subject to deal with, particularly with our brother, Student Minister Abel Muhammad. And of course, we're not profiling. But my dear brother is of Mexican descent, and we want to talk about, Brother Minister, the connection between the Mesoamerican Indian and, of course, the Native American Indian and the connection. And we want to talk also about the lessons, the actual facts, the third of which asks, what is the population of the original nation in the wilderness of North America and all over the planet Earth?
That's
the
right.
Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan does a wonderful, wonderful job in explaining what the answer is, the width, particularly that word width, 17 million at the time of the writing, with the 2 million Indians. And he makes a wonderful explanation of it. Let me get my book, excuse me.
Yes, definitely.
But
I know that book very well, Closing the Gap.
Yes, Closing the Gap. I have a copy here on my desk, but it's so tattered because I've been so many times. So I thought I'd get my newest hardcover. It looks a little better to show it. But I strongly recommend that all who can get this book, The Interviews of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. This is a magnificent record, and a magnificent expression of the mind, heart, and spirit of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on many, many subjects. The subject of which we'll be dealing with this evening, you will find on page 10 through page 14, wherein he explains the actual facts. Number 3, what is the population of the original nation here in the wilderness of North America and all over the planet Earth? The answer, of course, is 17 million at the time of the writing, with the 2 million Indians. And he makes a wonderful explanation of what that with actually means. So we're going to get into it, dear brother and sister. We're so very happy to have you once again. And again, thank you so much for your agreeing to be on the show with little notice. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem. We were by Allah's grace, we were blessed to today be putting in work on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to be doing on several levels: physical labor, doing some work to help in the process of helping to restore the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Sajda House, that I can't wait for all the believers to visit. And I was blessed to be there this afternoon. And, you know, so if I look a little bit lit up, it was because I was in a sacred place today.
Yeah, we can see it all over your visage, brother. All over your countenance. You just lit up, brother. All praises due
and
to
I would encourage everyone too, when they have time. We won't discuss that necessarily here, but when you have time, go to supportsajdahouse.com. It's a wonderful endeavor to help us to make sure we are the caretakers of our history and we tell our stories, you know, and it's still a living history, which is very important. So I'm so anxious to talk about this. When you called me yesterday and we spoke, brother, student minister James, I had not heard because I was doing Juma yesterday at Mosque Mariam.
Wonderful job too, I might add.
To Allah. So I had not heard President Biden's words. And so, of course, as soon as you called me, the moment I got home, I looked it up. And when I heard it, I immediately text my brother and said, yes, we'll do that tomorrow. Because I thought it was very, very interesting, to say the least. But inshallah, we'll get into that. But yes, sir, brother, it's always an honor to be able to assist and serve our nation and our people and help you all in the wonderful work that you do to help our people to know, to understand, and to do and be better.
All praises due to Allah. And I just want to open up with a talking point, which of course would be the theme of the show. And by the way, the flyer that is being circulated on social media says a 50-year-old overdue apology. And I apologize for that. It should have read a 150, as this flyer now updated is reading. It should have read a 150-year-old overdue apology, but it's even longer than that.
That's right. That's right.
Let's begin. And then I'll turn the show over to our wonderful co-hosts, Sister Starla Muhammad and Student Minister Chad Muhammad. President Joe Biden on Friday formally apologized to the Native American for what he described as one of the most horrific chapters in American history. Government-funded boarding schools that abused indigenous children and forced them to assimilate over a 150-year period. Quite frankly, he states, there is no excuse that this apology took 150 years to make. Well, with that, we can agree with you, President Biden. Biden said in Laveen, Arizona, after calling for a moment of silence to remember those lost and the generations living with that trauma. At least 18,000 children were taken from their families and forced to attend more than 400 boarding schools across 37 states of the then territories between 1819 and 1969. 3 years ago, Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, the first Native American to serve as a cabinet secretary, commissioned the Federal Indian Boarding School initiative to review the school's impacts on Native Americans. Well, 18,000. Thank you for that, recognizing the 18,000. But in reality, it is 60 plus million when you talk about the decimation of the ranks of our Native American brothers and sisters who are members of the original family. And that's not even inclusive of the Carib Indians, the Mesoamerican Indians. The number is astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
So let us get into this subject matter, Brother Minister. What I'd like you to do is to share with us the connection between the Black man and woman of America, the original people of the planet, and of course, our Native American brothers and sisters.
Yes, sir. Let me start by first giving the greetings to you all and to our audience, of course, of Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
And I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who intervened in our affairs in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. And we thank him for raising for us our eternal leader, teacher, and guide, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we thank them for the continuation of that mercy and that guidance and that life-giving and life-saving teaching, which is given to us today through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I have to raise their names because what we share over these airwaves into the sacred ears and homes and wherever you may be listening of our listeners and our viewers, it's not what Brother Abel or Sister Starla or Student Minister Chad or Student Minister James thinks. We want to know, what does God and the Messiah have to say about this?
That's right.
What does the Christ have to say about this? What did the scriptures tell us about what is happening today? Because there are so many questions on our identities as individuals and as a people that without that clarity, we really cannot see and understand what is happening or why it's happening.
That's right.
Without knowing who we are as people, we are lost in this time. We are lost by the time we are in lost. Because if we don't know who we are, we can't do good, because we don't even know who we are to do good. Who are we? What is my purpose? What is my identity? So we thank Allah because it was He, Master Fard Muhammad, who identified us, gave us our identity.
That's right.
The Black man in America and their brother, the so-called Native American Indian. He grouped us as one body, members of the same nation. He said that we are one nation. He put us together with one another.
That's right.
And as Brother Student Minister James mentioned, look at that word that he used. He first identified the Black people in America, called at that time Negroes.
That's right.
As the original people and members of the original nation. But when he asked about what the total population of the original nation is, it wasn't just the number of the so-called Negroes. He purposely included the so-called Native American, Indian by others. But he teaches us that they are original people. Two original people, bonded and connected from times of antiquity, before Caucasians existed on the planet.
Go ahead, sir.
We were family to one another. We lost that connection by our own doing, and then that division was further pounced upon and severed by an enemy who did not want to see us reunited. For it is in the unity of our people that comes the real power to transform and change our communities. It's not by accident that when you look in the ghettos of America, the crime rates, the terrible health statistics, the poor educational access, and then even when we have access to it, it's worth nothing in terms of us building for ourselves in the ghettos of Black communities all over the country. And then when you go onto the reservation where the Native people have been trapped and put up out of sight, out of mind, you find deplorable conditions as well. Poor health, poor access to food, terrible education, bad health, bad economy. Every one of our people suffering, not to mention when you go into the heart of the barrios of the Native people called Latin American, you find the same statistics. There may be a few stores here and there. There may be even little communities, a Mexican town, a Puerto Rican town, these type of places set up, but that is a few who benefit. The masses of the people are in the same condition. Poor, hungry, poor health, terrible education. But God himself sees our condition, saw our condition, and came himself to change and transform the Black, the brown, the red, the condition of our communities by giving us the identity of who we are. We can't bottle ourselves up into some little island, some little land mass that's just a couple of 100 years old or even a couple of 1,000 years old. We have a stronger base and a longer history than that. It is a disservice to ourselves to begin with our enemy and their conquest and raping of our peoples. That is not our origin. That is the most recent, really, confusion that has come, because the enemy has come and mixed his blood in amongst us, creating different shades of people, different cultures, different languages, and then embedding his idea into the people that it's better to be lighter, that it's better to be more Eurocentered, whether it's English, whether it's Spanish, whether it's French. And our poor original communities are trapped, trying to figure out, oh, why do I feel so bad about myself? Why am I drawing towards this bleaching cream? Why am I drawing my attention towards this hair relaxer? Why is everyone on TV blonde-haired and blue-eyed when the masses of my people in the community do not look like that? Yet that is raised as the standard of beauty for our communities, all of them. So our origin and connection was severed by an enemy, and God himself comes to restore that with perfect scientific knowledge that we are the original people. Some call themselves Indian, some call themselves African, some call themselves Caribbean or from the West Indies. All of these are modern names of these places. And even if we go to the ancient names of these places, that's still not our origin.
Go ahead.
Our origin is linked to the originator, the creator. That's why it's such a beautiful language that is used amongst the Native American people. Great grandfather, the grandfather spirit. Well, a grandfather is the father of your father. So we know that there's a connection genetically to our root and our history. And let me say this, Brother James and Brother Chad and Sister Starla, so many today are causing confusion amongst even what being indigenous is.
Go ahead, brother.
We don't have to use that name. Indigenous means you're native to a place, that you're from there. Well, we're native and indigenous to the planet Earth, not to any one territory. And you and I can't go to some anthropological department at some university funded by Caucasian people. And now that becomes the standard of indigeneity, of our indigenousness? No. No professor is now your chief because he went and studied some rocks and white people gave him a doctorate and now he's the chief and he sets the tone of what the tribes do? Absolutely not.
Come on, bro.
Nor is it a political alliance. You can't tell me that my registration on some paper that white people put a stamp of approval on is what makes me an authentic Indian. On some registry. Did our ancestors have a registry? Did our ancestors get their acceptance into the society, into the tribe by going to the white man's universities? So then how is that our standard today? Taking some quantum blood test to see how much quote unquote indigenous blood you have. Is that what the chiefs of the past did? If they didn't, why is that our standard today? And who gave it to us? And are we willing to bow to such to get some cheap crumbs of funding from a government that has never loved our people and wants us now to separate real quote unquote Indians because they're registered in some doggone tribe to those who don't know the tribes that they come from because we were deprived of that knowledge, because our parents were killed, because we were put in these damnable boarding schools where they did not allow us to learn our own language. Just like they didn't let the native brothers and sisters in these boarding schools learn the native language, keep the customs of the hair, of the painting of the body, of the piercings of the body. All of these customs were removed from them. And do you know that the same thing happened to those who came from Latin America? Once they entered into the United States, they forced them to not speak Spanish anymore, even though Spanish is not our native language, but it's the language that connected the grandchild to grandma and even to mom and dad. So they purposely created this and severed this connection so we would not be able to learn from our mothers and fathers, learn from grandfather, learn from grandmother. But God knew this was going to happen.
Come on, brother.
Came with a perfect language and a perfect teaching. We don't start with a tribe, with a territory. We start with the creator. So we are the original people of the planet Earth. We're not confined to North America, to some island in the Caribbean or some island in the Far East. We're not even the largest and the best of the land masses. We are not confined to that.
Go ahead, brother.
We are the original people of the planet. Different shades, yes. Different cultures, yes. Different customs, yes. Different ways of conveying knowledge, yes. But that's not a reason for division. The Holy Quran says it so perfectly. Allah made us into tribes and families so that we might know one another.
Yes, sir.
Now look at that. The purpose of our differences is for knowledge. All of us have something to contribute, but instead of seeing the value of the differences of the family of the original nation, we're taught to despise and reject one another. So God had to come and set the tone.
Go ahead.
Tone.
Yes, sir.
Set the tone that we all tune up by. And today, I was at a play last night, brothers and sisters. Just last night, me and my wife went to see a wonderful play here in Chicago about our sister Elvira Arellano, who 17 years ago, she took sanctuary in a church right here in Chicago, fighting a deportation case, and it made news all over the world. And we, the Nation of Islam, we brought her food. We, the Nation of Islam, came and would sit with her, and the sisters, the MGT, visited her, and members of the Puerto Rican community came and visited her. But in this play yesterday, it brought me and my wife to tears. There is a scene where they're recreating her being in sanctuary in the church, and a reporter in the scene asks her, "What do you do while you're here all day?" She said, "I have conversations with my friends who come from the Nation of Islam."
Wow, Akbar. Yes.
They were not afraid to put it in a scene.
Wow.
In a book that our late brother, the Reverend Slim Coleman, who may Allah be pleased with him, passed earlier this year. He wrote a book about her experience because it was his church that she took sanctuary in. And in that book, there's only a few pictures in that book. But do you know whose beautiful face is in that book? the face of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a full photo of him in the book on the history of that woman's life as an indigenous Mexican woman.
Go ahead.
Here
Yes.
as a so-called migrant, a migrant in her own land, in her own territory. And she was attacked by some members of the black press at that time, because people were comparing her to Rosa Parks. She never compared herself to Rosa Parks. Others did. She said she was inspired by Rosa Parks. So she was putting black people in the lead position. She was giving her wind beneath her wings and the flowers to those who inspired her. And do you know what else they said in that play yesterday, which is a real life thing that happened? The pastor of that church, our sister Reverend Emma Lozano, she conveyed that the only people who aren't migrants here in this country are those who are the native people and those who were brought here from Africa because they never asked to come here. So they should not be treated in that way. They have a greater position. So even in that, but she said she didn't refer to them as the Indians. She referred to them as the original people.
Look at that. Come on.
Praises due to Allah.
I'm saying all of that just to say this, Brother James.
Yes, sir.
We've been given the language. We've been given the knowledge. Now, some people may not like it. They may want a language of division, a language of separation, because you feel that you are owed something, and you're right. But God knows best what we're owed, and God knows best who we are. And if God said with the 2 million Indians, then to be against that language is to be against the God whose mind gave us that language. And that's a dangerous position to be in, because in this hour, we cannot be successful and be against God in his day. So this is what we're looking at. God has given us the bridge to close the gap, and that bridge is called Muhammad. That bridge is called Farrakhan. They've already closed the gap. I just noticed, because I haven't been on this view in a while, right above my head right here is a picture that I was given by our brother who was the former student minister in Dallas and who helped in the refurbishing of Mosque Mariam for so many years. And this is a picture, you can't really see it, and I don't want to show it, to be honest, because I've never seen it in the public, so I won't give you a zoom in on it right now. But that picture was taken at Big Mountain. In that picture behind me is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Mother Khadija Farrakhan, there on the mountain, ready to give their life to resist the American invasion and taking of the land from the people. This is a sacred history. This is a sacred connection. This is a divine unity and reunification, which God himself is at the center of. So you may not like it, and you could say that them natives never did anything to us, and some Native American had slaves. Yes, that's in the history. It's true. Some black people had slaves. How are you going to go and figure that and rationalize that? It doesn't make sense. None of it does. But why don't you give your own people the benefit of the doubt? How many black men bought other lives to free them? How many Native people bought lives to have them become part of the tribe and the family, because that was the only way to lawfully get that from the enemy? We always think the worst of one another because our mind is poisoned by the enemy's thinking. Yes. And unfortunately, it's on all sides of the equation. That's why the best thing we can do is get counsel and divine guidance from men who have proven their honesty, their trustability, and that they will not sell us out. There's no benefit in Master Fard Muhammad having said with the 2 million Indians. He could have said 17 million, and all black people would know that it's them. Why did God decide that's not enough for you to know? There is more to you than meets the eye. And he had to begin to open that door 94 years ago. Because look at it, 94 years later, we still wrestle with that. We can't even get over colorism. dark skin, light skin. Dark skinned people saying light skinned people are the ones who were the house slaves. Really? Where'd you get that from? I never saw the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teach that. Who told you that? Oh, somebody on YouTube? Go take your YouTube degree and see what you can do with it. See whose lives you can transform with it. Because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, with this divine truth, is waking up Latinos every day who didn't even know their indigenous roots, and they're reconnecting it to it. They didn't know their Black roots, and they're reconnecting to it. He's waking up Native people who are looking on the horizon, and they know something is wrong, and they know the answer is not political. And more every day, we have Native people, those from Latin America and those who are so-called Native American, accepting their own and being themselves, because God is showing us our true power, our true purpose, and our true origin in the world. And none of us wants to be left out of God's calling, because when he said that beautiful language, the original man,
come on, brother,
find ourselves in that. We're not subordinate. We're not here by some curse. We're not here to be servants of another people. We're here to help make a new world in obedience to the will of God. And that's who we really are. We're brothers and sisters who are in the cornerstone aspect of building the kingdom of heaven, the hereafter, Allah's kingdom on earth.
All praises due to Allah. Very beautiful, Brother Minister. And I'd like to punctuate your wonderful words with words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, once again found in that illuminating book, Closing the Gap.
That's right.
On page 11, the bottom of the page, we read, "Now we're in the time of the coming of God, the most merciful of those who show mercy, who comes now to retrieve what is lost and to bring it again to its once high position with himself. He wants the Native American to go along with the original man to be reconciled again to that high position. So with," he continues, "means accompany us in the process of resurrection."
That's right.
With means being in harmony with God and with us in our desire to be resurrected and reconciled to God.
That's right.
Thus we can reclaim the original position that we and they had with God. With means to be in harmony, to be in agreement, to be in accord, to be with. With here means not just to go along for the ride, but be in absolute unity with the spirit of the journey.
That's right. And if you notice, brother, I got that same page marked right in my book right here. That's where my little pink
all praises
tag
due to Allah. Yes, sir. Well, wonderful. All praises due to Allah. We want to, of course, turn it over now to our co-hosts, and hopefully through them engage our viewing and listening audience. So at this time, dear Sister Starla, I'd like to turn the mic over to you.
Yes, sir. Brother Abel, I found it interesting when reading the news, and I wasn't surprised in the least, but the fact that they're stating that Mr. Biden was the first sitting U.S. president to offer this apology. And when we think about how many presidents this country has had,
that's right.
What does that speak to? The fact that it took to the 47th administration of this country and a lame duck president at that to now come forward with this apology. Can you speak on what you think significant about that?
You know, it was interesting because reading his words, I would really encourage all the listeners to find the video of his apology, quote unquote. I say apology, quote unquote, because when you see it, it doesn't sound like an apology to me. Mm-hmm. To me, a characteristic of an apology is remorse, being full of sorrow. That's why we say, I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah.
He's shouting, almost proud, when he said, I'm the first. He has such glee to, like, he's proud that it took 100+ years to admit this. And like, he's such a great man now for doing it when he has no power to do anything. Like you mentioned, it is interesting to come from a lame duck president, right? Honestly, and this is honest to God, I don't remember the last time I saw President Trump before that yesterday, before that press conference. I don't remember the last time he was in the news. I've seen former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris everywhere, but I had not seen the president. And even that, I had to search for it. Did not come across my feed. If Brother James had not told me, I would not have come across it. I had to go search for it on Google. It's interesting. He went into Arizona, which is a battle state, right on the border. He went there amongst some of the tribes there that I've had the pleasure to meet with when I've spent time in Arizona. And I'm trying to think of, and I'm trying to see if I can find it here, the name of the tribe that is there. They start with the letter G because it's a tribe that I'm not as familiar with, but I was blessed to meet some of them. The Gila Crossing, it's called, the Gila Crossing area. And I was blessed to, on one of my visits to Arizona, meet some of the young brothers from that area. Beautiful people. They look like Mexicans because that's the area that used to be Mexico.
Yeah. And
it's interesting to me because I don't know, we have a saying that we've learned that, when justice delayed, right? Is it justice denied? Because there is a time limit when somebody points out the wrong. It's a window of mercy to acknowledge, to then confess. But that's not the end of the process, is it? Great. We give you applause, President Biden, that it took 47 presidents to acknowledge and to accept what had been pointed out as wrong. But there's more steps in this process now. I didn't hear a repentive tone. I haven't seen anything that is done to atone for what was done. Yes, it's great to point out, and I want to read you some of President Biden's words. I thought they were beautiful, what he said. But if it's only words, then are you really sorry? Have you really repented? He said that, and he acknowledged it did take place, the horrors that were done to the native people. I mean, that's good. Thank you for acknowledging it, but the native people didn't need you to acknowledge it. We've lived it.
Go ahead.
Every step of it. We're still experiencing it right now. But listen to what he said. Darkness can hide much. It erases nothing. Some injustices are heinous and horrific. They can't be buried. We must know the good, the bad, the truth. We do not erase history. These are the president's words.
Go ahead, brother.
We make history. We learn from history and we remember so we can heal as a nation. Well, how can that be true when Black people still suffer because darkness is what is cast on what will happen to Black people? That's great. You went into Arizona to admit what happened in the boarding schools, but that's not the most horrific thing that happened to the native people.
That's right, brother.
The apology, like you alluded to earlier, Student Minister James, it's not 50 years or 150 years old. It's over 500 years old.
That's right.
Since they came to the land in this month of October, when Christopher Columbus first landed here, they had been decimating, disrespecting, desecrating, and misusing and abusing and murdering the native people, all in the name of colonization, all in the name of a God that is for their whiteness and against every other aspect of our existence. I would suggest to all of our listeners, there's a lecture that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did in 1992 Savior's Day, the 500th year anniversary of Columbus coming to what is called the New World. It is called Black and White, a solution to the race problem, Savior's Day 1992. In that lecture, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gives to us an explanation of the motives of Columbus,
Go ahead.
of what gave birth to Columbus, of how he allowed and the escape for the second time of Caucasians out of Europe after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had bottled them back up into Europe a second time. And they lost almost another 1,000 years there, and they were cut off from going to the east by the Muslims in their winning of the Crusades and beating the Crusaders. And it was Columbus who was a half original man. That means he was part us, original, and part them, Caucasian. A black father and a white mother, said the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he grew up hating the Muslims because the Muslims would not allow the people out of into the east. They were bottled up into Europe, but he became enamored with the sea and decided he would go west to let his people out so they could get to the east. So when he lands in this part of the world, he called the people Indians because he was seeking a route to India. And since he was traveling west, he called that place and those people the West Indies and the West Indians. Now look at that. A confused man who didn't know what he was looking at, but was so wrapped up in himself. He thought he was being commissioned by God to do something for his people, and he was. But it wasn't what he thought. They were looking for a new Jerusalem, a new world, a paradise for themselves. But God would never establish his kingdom on rape, murder, and the abuse of other human beings. So they cannot have that claim. And instead, they've set up an absolute judgment for themselves. So yes, as the president said to the world yesterday, that darkness can hide much, but it erases nothing. So does a confession or admittance of a wrong. That's good, but it doesn't change anything.
That's right.
Unless you continue the process. And you can't make me believe that you'll give justice to the native people and deny black people justice. You can't make me believe you'll give justice to the native people and not give justice to those who's come from South America, Latin America, because you've destroyed their economies and their civilizations, their governments. You've undermined them, forcing them to flee from these places. You can't make us believe that you're really remorseful in the mistreatment of these indigenous people and support the bombing and the genocide of the Palestinian people in their ancestral home. You can't make us believe that after you broke hundreds of treaties, now you're sorry. Well, if you are sorry, what are you going to do to repair what you've acknowledged and admitted was heinous and horrible? You can't just say, man, I did a terrible thing. Sorry, we're all good now. Nope, that's not how it works. You must do something to repair what you've injured and damaged. And if you won't go to that phase, then your words are worth nothing. And unfortunately, I have not seen anything that will help repair or restore what was done to the native people. So it's a beautiful gesture less than 2 weeks before an election in a critical state where the native people make up 5% of the voting block. But is it sincere? And my prayer and my plea to our different tribal families is don't let your fear of someone you know hates you let you get suckered in by the same deceiver who you know also does not like you. We know better today. We must do better today. And fear cannot be our motive today. It must be truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Let us stand strong and say, thank you, Mr. President, for the apology. Now, what are you going to do?
That's right.
To repair what you admit was done improperly to our people. And if there is nothing, then you can keep your apology and we keep our vote until somebody's willing to address it.
Go ahead, brother.
Beautiful. Well put.
Very beautiful.
Student Minister Abel, it's something that you was mentioning about that because, of course, we just went through in celebration and commemoration of the 29th anniversary of the Million Man March, the Holy Day of Atonement.
That's right.
And as you was talking about that, in the spirit of atonement, after their president, supposed apology,
Right.
and that we talked about how, you feel the words should be followed up by actions, which a lot, that I think that's across the board. We feel like that. My question to you is, what should that look like? What should we expect? What, like in the spirit, like if you're going through the 8 steps of atonement and we at that atonement stage, not saying that we're there, but once again, there in that 5th stage, how do one make amends and starts to repair what one have done?
Isn't that something, brother? Think about this. How do you repair depriving a people of the knowledge of themselves?
Mm-hmm.
How do you repair separating children from their parents, creating a terrible cycle where, suicide rates in the native communities are, they're unspeakable, the percentage of suicides. What's the root of that? The root of that is broken families, broken promises, deprivation. How do you repair that? The government doesn't have the power to repair it. They have some resources that they could lend towards the repair. But the native people have in our history, we know that a time would come that was a time of darkness, a time of division, a time of separation, and there was already preparation for the restoration. So different tribes have different medicine bundles, different teachings, different healings. But I have to humbly offer that all of those beautiful teachings will only be relevant when the teaching that makes all of them relevant is shared with the people. And that knowledge is the knowledge that Almighty God, the Creator, shared with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it is being shared with us through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. The knowledge of the Creator God, the knowledge of ourselves as the original people of the Creator, the time in which we live in, who our enemy is. And once we know that, once we are rooted in our history and in that knowledge and in the spiritual elevation of our people, we'll be on the path to be restored. And we'll be able to begin healing ourselves and healing the land. But it begins with us accepting, as Master Fard Muhammad said, accept your own and be yourself. You and I can never be ourselves as in original indigenous native people and be feeding from the kitchen of our enemy. That's not what our ancestors did. We can never be our own. And we're still speaking the language of our enemy. And I don't mean English or Spanish. I'm talking about the way we think, which is expressed through our mouth. Look at the language we use with one another. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us a perfect language. Brother, sister. We have to see ourselves as brother and sister again. We have to see ourselves in our divinity. And then, as we are on the road to being repaired by God, then we put a demand on the government. Fulfill your treaties. Give us back the land which the Lord our God has given
Right.
to us. We don't need you as our father to give us the land when you think we're fit for it. We are demanding it because we're making ourselves fit for it.
Come on.
But it requires us to accept responsibility and atone within our own communities first. These steps are for the government, yes, but they're for us, you and I, from the Hopi, from the Lakota, from the Seminole, from the Cherokee, from the Blackfoot, from the Apache, from the Mexica, from the Azteca, from the Maya. All of us have injured one another. And within the Mayas have injured Mayans. Aztecs have injured Aztecs. Incas have injured Incas. Zulu have injured Zulu. You name the tribe. Taino has injured Taino. All of us have injured one another. And in our ignorance, we can't expect healing to come from those who benefit most from our injury and our division. We have to love ourselves enough to put down the enemy's fire water called alcohol.
Go ahead, brother.
We have to love ourselves enough on the reservation and in the barrios and the ghettos to put down the illegal and the legal drugs that they give us access to. Yeah, you can say, well, our fathers, they prayed with tobacco. Is that why you're doing it? Or are you doing it out of an addiction which our grandfathers did not have? And are you smoking what they smoked in the right manner? Or are you taking what the enemy gives you as a genetically modified substitute and thinking you're connecting to our ancestors? No, all lies have to end today. All deceit has to end. And it starts with us. Stop deceiving ourselves. How can we expect them to fulfill their promise when we won't even be true to our own promises to ourselves? Let's clean ourselves up. Let's get our barrios together. Let's stop waiting on them to send us care packages to the reservation. We've got land, we've got manpower, but we don't have love for ourselves. And that's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gives to every human being, is the knowledge of yourself, so that you can love yourself, accept yourself, be yourself, and then teach others to do the same thing. Once we have that, oh, brother, student minister Chan, let the government do what it wants to do. It would not matter. But we can't even put a rightful, justified demand on the table until we first are just to ourselves. And in order for us to be just to ourselves, we first have to point out the wrong within ourselves and acknowledge we've been truly unjust to ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, the enemies help. They don't make it easy. But we have a man in our midst, in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who's showing us, in spite of the most vehement detractors, the most vicious attacks, he will not surrender. He will not compromise correctness and righteousness to the will of God. And he is winning every day. Why don't we listen to Muhammad and Farrakhan? Well, they're not natives. Really? Go look at your native teachings. And then read Message to the Black Man. Read Closing the Gap. Listen to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and tell me you don't hear a pure word from a pure man, not somebody who speaks with a forked tongue like our enemy. No, he's an honest man with love for the black, the brown, the red. And I say black, brown, red, but in truth, it's all the black nation.
That's true. Come on.
We just don't see ourselves that way. I picked this tie today, Brother James, because one of our brothers here in Chicago, Brother Rashawn, he made this one. And I had to have it because it has, of course, the indigenous prints on it. But you notice it has all the colors. It has the black, it has the red, it has the tan, it has a little bit of blue like the water and the sky in it.
Yes, sir.
All the colors are there because all the colors are in us. We don't have to divide ourselves based on color. That's so silly. And our brother who's married to a beautiful MGT from Nicaragua, Sister Cynthia. And Nicaragua is a nation in Central and South America that most people forget about because it's a smaller place, but it literally means black water. Nicaragua, the black water. Well, the Quran talks about all life comes from water. What kind of life comes from black water? We know that it says that the first man was made out of black mud in the Holy Quran.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, isn't
right.
it?
Right.
We're all wrapped up. The truth is all in us. We have to stop being fixated on looking at it from the same man who has damaged us, who can't repair us. But God has the healing. He's already given us the healing. But what good is a prescription from a wonderful doctor if the patient won't take the prescription?
Allahu Akbar.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Dear family, we have arrived at the top of the second hour of our program. And of course, we're thankful to Almighty God, Allah, for your time and your attention. And for those of you who are tuning in right now, we are hosting our dear brother, student minister Abel Muhammad, the representative of the Latino community of the Nation of Islam. You know, I want to make sure I say that right, Brother Abel. How exactly should we refer to you in your title and your representation?
You know, student minister is wonderful. Brother is the best title.
Yes,
we could all have. And I function as the representative to the Latin American community and the Spanish-speaking community for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam.
All praises due to Allah. Wonderful. So, yes, we are honored and privileged to host our dear brother dealing with the subject of Biden's, President Biden. I want to extend the proper respect. President Biden's apology to the Native American people, what it actually means, if anything, particularly since we are in the season of atonement.
That's right.
As we progress in the program, I'd like to engage the listening audience. So I'm going to ask of my co-hosts, are there any questions, Sister Starla, Student Minister Chad, that we can pose to our esteemed guests through our audience?
Yes, sir. I'll place one on the screen from Any Wright. My brother Abel Muhammad, was it something that happened recently that made him want to apologize?
You know, not that I'm aware of. This is a long time coming, he admitted himself. But conveniently, a few days before the election,
that's what
he's no longer, and he used it as an opportunity to rev up support for Vice President Kamala Harris, which is, I mean, on a tactical level, that's fine, I guess, but not when you're dealing with such an important topic. You can't politicize this. That's what I didn't like about the tone of the president. He was, if you watch the video, he's yelling, I apologize. I didn't understand it. It didn't feel like an apology. It felt like, and the people are applauding. And don't get me wrong. Some of those in attendance 70 years ago, they're still alive and went through this and have been survivors of what happened in these boarding schools. And some of them wept because they never thought a president would apologize for what was done. And that's the beautiful heart of the original people. We don't want injustice. We're not looking for vengeance. We just want what is right. We want to be at one. We want to be at peace. We want to be in harmony. We want to be with the rest of humanity. That's what with means, to be in harmony with. So we're looking to be accepted. We're looking to be acknowledged. I'm sure holding that terrible experience for 70 years, they probably never imagined that somebody would even admit and acknowledge it. But that's not enough. Because how many are buried that never heard the apology? And if the apology is just words, how does it help the situation? It doesn't, because that ill affected those children. How many broken families came out of that circumstance because of what happened in those schools that broke human beings, that broke their trust? Is that possibly why there's such a terrible rate of addiction and suicide in the Native community? Because of the after effects. See, how do you repair that? We can't go bring those lives back. So your words, thank you, Mr. President, thank you, that possibly some of those who still live may rest better now, have some hope now. But how are you going to help their families of the ones who didn't survive that? What are you going to do to help the people who are descendants from the thousands? I think what was the number? 18,000? Is that what we said?
18,000. Yes, sir.
Like you said, a drop in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But each of those lives is sacred. So what are we going to do as a country to repair that? And if you won't do anything, then keep your apology. Because all it is a symbol without substance. The substance of atonement, of reparative and restorative actions,
go ahead, brother,
must take place in quickly, because the Day of Atonement is not forever, and it's not just one day either. It's a window of time, a time period within which the God of justice will allow us a period of grace to get right. How long, how many centuries, how many presidents did you think it would take? It's not by accident that it's 47th president, because the 47th chapter of the Holy Quran is Muhammad.
That's right.
And Muhammad is the answer. But it also means war. And it's not by accident that there's war in the world. And we hope that this isn't another tactic to try to give our people false hope, as there appears to be an escalating war, that they may be needing more soldiers and more votes.
Come on, brother.
And we hope you're not playing politics and worsening an injury which you acknowledge was horrific and horrendous. But would you now make it worse by placating a community with a show of words, while in your back pocket is another dubious scheme to not just take votes, but possibly take more lives? We hope not. But if that is in the thought of those who rule, know that Allah is in control today, and his will be done. And he has come to save the lives of the Black people of America, and with the Black people of America, the Native people of America, and with the Black and Native people, the original inhabitants of the world, that are made up of those who are called Latin Americans, those who are called Asians, those who are called all of these different new terms from the mixture that has taken place. But God has come for all of them. So the ultimate answer is not just 17 million Black people with 2 million Indians, but the number that God gave us for who our people are. His people is all over the planet, 4,400,000,000. Every original man and woman. If you have just one drop of Black blood in you, said the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, claim it. Hold on to it, because that is your DNA. That is your genetics, but that is the Spirit of God.
Go ahead, brother.
That if we will just accept his will, he will allow us to be at one with one another, to be at one with him, and we can have peace, we can have justice, we can have repair. But it starts with us looking at the man and the woman in the mirror first and admitting where we have been wrong and letting go of the enemy's ways. And yes, let's go back to our traditional ways, because those are traditions in which we honored our mother and our father. Those are traditions in which we took care of our women and saw them as sacred. We want to go back to the traditional way where men were warriors, but not ignorant. Warriors to defend what was most valuable, which was our people and our way of life. Let's go back to that, and we can have it greater than it was if we will just listen to good, honest truth. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has proven over 6 decades
Absolutely.
that he is unafraid to let us know the truth of who we are. It's good for the native. It's good for the Latino. It's good for the indigenous. It's good for the black. It's good for the brown. It's good for the red. It's good for the yellow. It's even good for the white.
That's right.
But you have to listen. And after you listen, you and I have to make some decisions and make some changes, because the time and the window to make those changes is quickly closing. The Day of Atonement is not going to last forever. And that window is closing every day, getting narrower and narrower.
Yes, and praise be to Allah. Thank you, Student Minister Abel. We're going to keep the questions going. This next one is up from our dear brother Tony Muhammad out of our regional mosque number 29. He said, Assalamu alaikum, brother minister. While it is true that many of us died to have the right to vote, it is also true that many of us historically have died trying to separate from our open enemy. Can you expound on this fact?
Wow. You know, it's true. There is power in our vote if we have, as those who vote, the electorate, if we're enlightened to our own self-interest.
Go ahead, brother.
Otherwise, it's just another tool of manipulation. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has given us guidance and enlightened us that we should know how to use our vote at this point.
That's right.
If we don't, we can't blame him for that. We have to blame ourselves. And it has always been amongst us, those who don't want to be a part of this system. But we're in it, but not of it. So while we're in it, we do have to learn how to wisely use our vote. And it's not wise to vote out of fear.
Come on.
We have to make conscious decisions. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has in his monumental book, A Message to the Black Man in America, a section on what we need is a Muslim politician.
That's right.
Why? If we don't vote, if the vote has no power, if the vote is useless, why would the messenger of Allah
Good point, brother.
tell us what we need? We have a great Muslim mayor in the state of Michigan.
Yes, we do.
In Benton Harbor.
Yes, sir.
And brother mayor, student minister mayor, because student minister is the priority. Student minister mayor Marcus Muhammad, who I grew up with and I known since he was in college. And he's so strong and beautiful in his representation of us on that level. So there's something to this that we have to understand. There's a balance. While we're in this world, we have to learn to leverage what is offered to us. Our hope is not in it. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, if judgment comes tomorrow, we have to eat today.
That's right.
So we are practical.
That's right.
Okay. If one of you has the mind to go into that system, knowing its limitations to do good for our people, and you're an honest broker for our people, we'll support you. We'll love that. Somebody to fight for us. But we also don't have any false hopes that we can change this system. I saw a beautiful black teacher. Somebody sent me her video. I forgot her name, but she was talking about how this system is not broken. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to function. She said, we complain about police brutality. She said, if you knew the origin of policing, it would not surprise you why we're treated this way. It starts through sheriffs who were arranged to go after as slave capturers. So they were in their origin, and the nature of a thing is wrapped up in how it is originated. If they originated to harass and capture black people, how do you change that? Just because they wear a different uniform today. They have squad cars instead of horses today to serve and protect, but to serve and protect who? An educational system that we were never allowed into. They deprived us of even learning how to read for 300 years. So how are they going to give you now an educational system? And we believe that that's the answer.
Come on, Brother Abel.
See,
Yes,
we have to look past out of it. A political system. Now they give us the vote that they never wanted us to have, and they're still trying to take it from us. They give you a vote and then limit who you can vote for. You know that there are third parties, candidates, right? You have our brother Conrad or Dr. West, who is running for the presidency. Very few people. Cornel West, that's his name. Cornel West, who's running for presidency. You have Jill Stein running for another party from the other side over there. There's other options. How come you limit it to two only? And two that everyone admits, well, I have issues with this one. I have issues with that one, but I want to vote for one of them anyway. Why? Why can't you find somebody that actually represents you to support? What made you think that it's a limit of just these two?
Good question.
And this is the problem. We're always given the illusion of freedom through a false choice. Do you want to go to school, or do you want to become, go into a trade? Well, why are those my only two options? There's such a great universe and world full of everything. Why are you limiting me? Why do I only have two things to choose from? Do you want to, eat a pork chop, or do you want to eat bacon? Well, wait, that's not a choice.
No, that's right.
That's not a choice at all. But this is how they make us think, and I make light of it, but I want us to see the real ridiculousness of what we've accepted as reality. That a choice would have to be two things. Does God only have two options for any of us? No. Is there just two stars we can gaze on? No. Is there just two trees? No. Why is it always two? Even for eating, we have options upon options. A spouse to choose from, options upon options. Where to live, what kind of region, what language to speak, what clothes to wear. So many options. But when it comes to freedom, justice, and equality, those who will determine our future, all of a sudden, it's got to be one of these two that you don't even like. No, that cannot be, and it has never been our way. I was in Cuba in 1995, brothers and sisters, during their elections. And I only came back because I wanted to go to the Million Man March. So I was there in June and July. And they would have town hall meetings with all of the candidates that were running. Now, they only have one party there because it was the Communist Party. But do you know how many people ran for office there? I'm not exaggerating. It sometimes took 2 and 3 days to have a candidates forum in a city hall or a town hall meeting because there were so many candidates and each of them had to be heard so that the people can make a choice. It wasn't, well, these are the two main ones. Nope. There could be 20 people on that thing. And the people were educated and asked real questions of them and then went and voted for the one they thought could represent them best. These were like what you would consider alderman elections. This was local, and you had 20 and 25 people running in some instances.
Wow.
And the place was packed when people came for the town hall meeting. They had like 99% participation in their voting. It was over 90%. Basically, everyone voted, and they didn't vote ignorantly. There was no campaign ads. Vote for me. Nope. You would come to the square. There was no commercials. You would come to the town hall meeting. You'd hear them out. You'd ask them questions over days and weeks. And then you would make your vote. Why can't we do that? Oh, we don't have time. We're too busy for that. You're too busy for freedom. You're too busy to take time to really consider who you're putting in a position of authority to make decisions for your children's life and your education and your taxes and your money and your community. You're too busy for that. Then we don't deserve freedom. If we're unwilling to sacrifice some time and some comfort to be able to be educated and make enlightened decisions about who we're going to entrust with leading our people from a political vantage point. And so, Brother Tony, I would say it that way, that we do need both. We don't have hope in this world, but while we're in the world, let's not be of it. Let's get people in there to make sure our tax dollars that we all pay, whether you call yourself a Muslim, Christian, Jew, right. You don't have to believe in none of it. They take your money. Every time you go to the store, they take your money. Every time you get a paycheck, they take your money. How ignorant would it be for us to let them take it when it's supposed to come back to our communities, help our communities? But if we have nobody in there fighting for us, we get what we pay for.
Praise be to Allah.
Well,
let's continue. I came across an article. Sister Starla, did you want to share something?
I was going to say there's a couple of more audience questions.
Sure.
Oh, there were just a couple of more. There are a couple of more audience questions, so we can do those after your
by all
comments.
means, let us engage the audience. I just wanted to share the content of this article I came across, but go right ahead. We want to engage the audience. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, let's see here. Brother Minister, question. I think they meant to add, when can we, or when can you produce tapes in Spanish that we can distribute to our Spanish-speaking family? I have Spanish-speaking friends that I would give the teaching to.
You know, you can go, there's actually, if you go to NOI.org, the lecture that Minister Ishmael did that we were all involved with, and we'll have another one coming soon, inshallah. The all Spanish one, you can lead them right to media, NOI.org, right to that link. And they have that full context of that in both English and Spanish. So if you have some in the household who speak English, some who speak Spanish, they could listen to it together. You also can go to Nuestra NOI on YouTube. And there are different programs that we've done there on as part of Closing the Gap family as well. Yes, that is up there where you can get all Spanish language. They're really lectures that we've presented online. And there's at least, I don't know, several dozen at least up there that we've done over the last few years that began during COVID, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so that's right. You can go to that as well. And that's, if Brother Tony, if you're still on, if you could put that in the chat, it's at Nuestra NOI. So you can get that on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can follow those as well. And on Twitter. And you'll have access to all of those lectures that were up already. And you just have to share the link with them. Also, if you go to the final call, you can call them directly. They will duplicate, for example, the one that Student Minister Ishmael did at the mosque there. You can get that in a CD form or a tape, whichever one. I don't know if they still run tapes. I know they'll do CDs or DVDs, but I don't think they do tapes anymore, Brother James.
Yeah, I don't think so, brother.
I don't even know who has a tape player anymore. So you might have some trouble with that.
I still got mine.
I have no, I do have one. We do have one. And I have a bunch of tapes, but I'm afraid to bring them out because they're going to tear up and dry out on there. But you can have them print copies and mail them to you, either DVDs or CDs of those as well. So you can call and notify the final call, and they can always burn, we would say, or make copies of those if you want to distribute them physically in the community as well. But that is coming, and we're working on several other things, including, the books of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, lectures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and you all may not know this, but if you go to NOI.org, at the top of the screen, there is a lot of Spanish content on there. There are articles, so there's NOI Spanish on there, and the whole page is in Spanish. So you can have articles by Brother Taineta, articles by Brother Jabril have been translated, of course, articles by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and it's at NOI.org. And when you go there, I don't remember exactly where it is, but I think it says Spanish or NOI Spanish. You can go there, and there's a long list. There's easily over 20 items on there that are readable, that you could also send people to those links or print them. I know brother student Captain David Muhammad, they soldiered in Milwaukee in the Spanish-speaking community, and they printed some of those articles and took it into the community, and the people received them with great joy as they were giving them final calls for the younger English speakers to read. The parents may not be able to read it, so they would give them the article on the Nation of Islam that Mother Taineta Muhammad wrote that is up on NOI.org, but they gave it to them in Spanish. So they would know who we are that have come into the community, and it was received with great joy and a great, great reception.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, dear brother.
Yes, sir.
We're going to continue with the questions. This next one is from our dear brother Derek Muhammad, and he asked the question. He said, Assalamu alaikum, brother Abel. Would you speak to how the division started with our brothers and sisters in Cuba in their connections to Black people in America?
Well, I'm not sure what division that is, because the Cuban community has been a great friend to the Black community. Mm-hmm. You know, our dear sister Asada Shakur is a main target. Mm-hmm. And a reason why they won't end the blockade on Cuba that deprives them of trade and really critical materials that they could have access to. And it was one of the bargaining points that America wanted them to extradite her back to the United States in order to think about relaxing that trade blockade. And they would not relinquish and give up our sister, who they see as a political refugee because of her strong stance on behalf of Black people in America. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's a very clear sign of the bond between the Cuban people and the Black people, because they could have easily said, like, look, she's not one of ours. She's an American citizen. Take her. And then we can benefit, quote unquote, our people, the Cuban people. But the fact that they didn't do that speaks volumes for how they see Black people. Mm-hmm. It was the great former Comandante Fidel Castro, may Allah be pleased with him, who spent much of the resources of the Cuban military and other aspects to support revolutionary movements, in particular in Africa, amongst Black people there. He famously came to the United States and went to Harlem to stay amongst Black people. And there's a famous, of course, meeting between him and Malcolm X on behalf of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, him receiving him there. And I won't get too far into it, but the house that I was at earlier today, there are some records that there's a very close tie between the Black people of America and the Cuban people. Cuba is at least 80% Black country, is what most people don't understand. The majority of people in Cuba look like you. Now, like in most other places, those who rule don't necessarily look like you. But you can go into Africa and they don't all look like us, and they're ruling us. So that's true. Not by accident. But in Fidel Castro, you had a beautiful human being who loved the Black people of Cuba and of America. And he wanted to see them educated. He wanted to see them really given the full liberties that a human being should have. And he functioned in that way and saw it as one cause, and knew that the rise of Black people, because of their mistreatment throughout the world, he knew that was critical to solidifying true justice for people. So he's always had that, and the Cuban people have had that at their heart since their inception after the revolution. Is there still racism? I'm sure there is, because we're still in a white-dominated Eurocentric world. But it's not like what we call racism here. I'll tell you that from my experience in Cuba personally. I was blessed to see our sister Asada Shakur back in 1995 when I was there, and have an afternoon with her, asking questions and learning from her. And it was one of the most beautiful afternoons of my life. Yes, sir. Because we see her as this revolutionary, but I got to see her as a mother. And not just a mother in terms of the actual physical maternal, with her child or her daughter. No. I'm talking about her mothering of us as a people, her wanting to see us free and willing to fight for our freedom, but not in some silly, way. She wanted to see us better. She wanted to see us free. She wanted to see us liberated. She wanted to see us active in our communities as fathers, as mothers. She wanted to see us no longer ignorant of the reality or whitewashed in our thinking that, a vote, a degree is going to make life better for us. No. We must have control of our own destiny. And it was her experience there. I saw her love for the Cuban people. Now, that's a woman who loves Black people to her core, willing to put her own life on the line for us. But she had so much love for the Cuban people and how they've embraced her as a hero for them. So whatever other, those who come here, many of them are leaving Cuba because they were those who come from families who used to rule before the revolution. And when the revolution took their resources, which they were building on the backs of the poor, and redistributed the wealth, they got up out of there because they had a capitalist and colonist mentality and colonizing mentality, and they did not want to stay there and be equal with everyone else. So they got up out of there, and it's terrible in Cuba, they'll say. Why? Because we have to work with everyone else. We don't get to work or benefit from others' work unfairly, because they don't like that. They wanted to be in a position of authority to deprive people of justice and their just due of their labor. So they were living in really slave-like conditions there on the sugar fields, on the sugar plantations, on the tobacco plantations, while rich, those from in particular Jewish and Western communities, made big dollars there. And the wealthy Americans used Cuba as their place where they went to get a vacation and to benefit themselves off the back of the poor Cuban people who would never see the benefit of that. So it's not by accident that if there is some interaction, depending on which Cubans you've interacted with, if they're here, it may be because they didn't like the conditions there, because they were deprived of being able to continue to misuse the Cuban people and the resources of the Cuban people. So they got out of there, which means they don't have the same view as Fidel and Che had of Black people. They have a perception that we should be able to dominate them. And if you make me equal with them, then I'm leaving. And so when they come here, they carry that with them, those who are of that thinking. But that is not the masses of the Cuban people. That's not the majority of the Cuban people by far. The majority of the Cuban people love I'll say it like this, honestly, from their mouth to my ears as I heard it. They love the American people because they know that the American government does not truly represent the American people. So we were treated with great respect when we went there, because they saw our act of defiance of the American government. It was illegal for me to go to Cuba when I went there in 1995. I had to go through Canada. And there was they threatened you with being in prison for 10 years. And I forgot how much the fine was that they charge you with. If they decide to charge you, they never did by Allah's grace. But I went there anyway. And they see it as such an act of brotherhood that we not only went there risking our own freedom to stand with them, but they make a clear distinction that we know that the U.S. government does not represent the true values of the American people, because when they speak with the American people, they feel a camaraderie with them. When they see the struggle, see, they're not ignorant. They read, they're literate in that country. They read our history better than we do. They're taught our history better than we are. They know about, I stayed there in Cuba, in the Dr. King Center. That's where I slept and lived, in the Dr. Martin Luther King Center in Havana. Now, if they hate Black people, why would they name a place that? And we're taught that, oh, they're communists, they hate religion. It was a Christian church that I stayed at there that is named after Dr. King. I was there at the meeting. The church I stayed at was hosting the summer meeting of all the local, not the local, all the country's young Christian leaders. And I was blessed to meet with them. I wasn't even registered in the Nation of Islam yet. I was still studying it, but I called myself a Muslim. And when they found out I was there, they invited me to attend and speak at that conference with them. So I was able to speak to other young Christian leaders. And they asked about the Nation of Islam and what we thought and how we saw things. And in my mind, I keep thinking, they keep telling us that they hate religion, that communists don't allow religion. Everywhere I went, there was a church in Cuba.
Come on, brother. Yes, sir.
And everywhere I went, they weren't walking around in fear like, oh, I can't tell you this. They had their issues with Fidel Castro, not the Christians, but just the Cuban people. They were not afraid to criticize Fidel. They criticized him. But when I would ask them, well, who would you have as a leader? Or is there somebody else that you would support? Oh, no. Fidel's our man. Because we know I might not agree with how he did certain things, but I know in his heart he thought he did what he thought was best. Not no sellout. Not no, some undermined thing like he's amassing wealth for himself. No, they just didn't agree with certain decisions. But you can't even get to that level unless you're educated and enlightened. Fidel was not afraid of his own people because he gave them a mind to think, and he didn't have to silence their critiques because he wanted them to be critical thinkers. But the difference is that the enemy starts tampering with that thought and inserting new ideas. And so today, the Cuba of today, because of social media, because of Western programming through television, radio, and the movies that has come in, and right-wing Christian theology that has entered that country, and funding from those groups.
Come on, brother.
They entered that country with the mind to undermine the thinking of the people and make them think that America will be better for you. America will be your friend. That's what they did in Venezuela. That's what they're trying to do in Brazil. It's not by accident that it's from Venezuela that so many have come here to this country. Who told them to come all this way? Where did they get the idea to come here? Who told them they'd be able to access jobs and access different things here? Where was that idea seated? They've been working on this for at least a decade, where they have right-wing Christian groups teaching not really theology. They're teaching Americanism and making them think that America can be their promised land and they'll be able to have access not to a more godly way of life, but access to a world where you are free to have access to whatever you want, and it doesn't have to be righteous or good. Wow. So many who come here, it's not because they're starving. They're not starving in Venezuela, not like that. They're not starving in Cuba, even though the food was rationed when I was there. They had to have rations of food because they were limited on an island without being able to trade with other countries on what they could produce for themselves. So an intelligent leadership says, nobody's going to starve, but also nobody's going to overindulge. We will ration out everything for you. And if you understand the value of that, you're fine. But if somebody's telling you in America, excuse me, you can eat all that you want, have it your way. Mm-hmm. Oh, now all of a sudden, they had Cuba Cola when I was in Cuba. A little bottle of delicious, very sugary Cuba Cola that I had down there.
Yes,
but
sir.
If somebody's telling you through commercials what you want is Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola represents an idea of freedom, perceived freedom.
Wow.
Greater than your own, that your own people are producing, that you all benefit from. So everybody was trying to get the American dollar back then and not the Cuban dollar anymore, because they couldn't use the Cuban dollar on the world market because nobody could trade with them. This creates a system where now you have a whole mindset amongst certain people from Latin America, Africa, and the Caribbean.
Come on.
Where they see themselves as in a position where they could be better and that they could benefit more greatly. And they see Black people as wasteful wasteful in an opportunity to do more for yourselves. That's just the honest truth. Many from that part of the world, they look at the black man in America and they're like, man, you're almost like spoiled brats. That's the thinking because of what white people have seeded the community with. You have all these things. If I just had a little bit of that, I could take care of my mom. I could take care of my dad, because they have a sense of family that was destroyed amongst the black man and woman in America, that they are unaware that that's what you're dealing with. They don't know what they're looking at. They're just comparing it to what they know. So many come here and say, if I could just get that low paying job, I can take care of myself and my family, not realizing that you're being treated so unjustly. And guess what? They soon discover when they get here, they can't take care of themselves and their family like they thought they would. Somebody promised them more gold for their labor than they were making in their own country.
Come on, Brother Abel. Yes, sir.
And they get here, and guess what? The gold isn't what they were promised. And now they're living in the barrios and in the ghettos with us. And there's an anger fermenting amongst us towards one another. Because now we're all at odds, thinking there are limited resources. There are no limited resources. There's just limited thinking. And because we don't function in unity with one another, we all suffer the consequences of our division. This is what the enemy has done. All we have to do is follow the plan of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
It's a proven plan.
Yes, sir.
Stop trying to get rich quick. Nothing in God's universe is quick. Nothing in his universe functions on unjust, unrighteous principles. We must be fair in our dealings with one another. We must be just in our dealing with one another. We must not try to copy and imitate the oppressor in taking advantage of one another and overpricing things and making things that are really outside of the scope of something that will benefit us as a people. We must get into a holistic approach about what real economy is. It's not just entrepreneurship on an individual level. Because the program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is not about individual entrepreneurship. It's about doing for self in a communal and unified manner. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of us who have common thinking, who have common knowledge about a common field. Let's get together and go into business, providing the goods and services that our people need. That's what your Arab brothers and sisters do. That's what the Jews did. And they all benefited from it.
Come on, Brother Abel.
Why can't we do it?
Yes,
Why
sir.
can't we do it? Because we don't trust one another. Because the enemy has seeded us with that. So much less if we don't trust one another. You see a Venezuelan, you see a Mexican, you see a Puerto Rican. I ain't trusting them at all. And we have that as our crutch and really our cross to bear. A crutch that we lean on to justify us not working with one another. And it's our cross that we have to carry. Because until we put it down, we're going to lift or walk with that heavy weight that we're not fit to carry and that we don't have to carry. It doesn't have to be our cross if we would just follow the good guidance that God has given us from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We can do for self. And you'll find when you and I respect ourselves and do for self, everyone else will respect us too.
Yes, sir. I'm almost applauding, brother. Physically. Yes, sir.
Right.
All praises due to Allah. Very beautiful, brother. Very beautiful. Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah.
All right.
Anything else, Sister Starla? What you want?
Well, we have about 15 more minutes. Again, our goal is to strive to close the program under or at the very least at 2 hours so it can be archived for future viewing and listening. But are there any more questions? Very quickly. I mean, it's difficult to do. Questions may be short, but the answers may be long.
Praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Let's give this time over to our dear brother to make.
I don't think.
Go ahead, Sister Starla.
No, so I don't think I see any additional questions.
All right. Let's give this remaining time over to our dear brother, student minister Abel Muhammad. Once again, we want to thank you, brother, on such short notice for agreeing to allow us to host you in this very important discussion. Thank you so much for making yourself accessible and available, brother. All praise is due to Allah.
Thank you. And if I could encourage everyone who is watching today and who will watch this to tune in tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central Time to NOI.org, where the National Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad, tomorrow he'll be delivering part 2 of our Holy Day of Atonement address, the 29th anniversary of the Million Man March. And his subject that he'll continue, it has a slight change in it. The first one was called Atonement and Responsibility. Who of the presidential candidates can save the lives of the people of America from the wrath of God?
Right.
This one has a slight change in the title.
Yes.
This one is called The Fall of America. Which one or who of the presidential candidates can save the lives of the people of America from the wrath of God? Part 2. And this is whether you're black, brown, red, yellow, or white, whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Jew. Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad will have a message for us from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in this critical time. I know you see it every day in the news. You gotta see what's happening in the Middle East. You gotta see them. And as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us at Savior's Day, the expansion of the war into other areas. They're trying to get into that Iran now.
Yes.
They're really, and there's some reports that things are already happening there. We have to find out what should we be doing and which one of these candidates, can they do anything? Because what is happening in the world right now, we have to know, where is God in this equation? How does he see it so that we can be on the right side and in the right way of thinking about what we're looking at? So who better than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to show us and enlighten us on how to look at these candidates in the context of the circumstances of the time we live in right now. The wrath of God is present now. Death has entered into the door. War is no longer on the horizon. War is here now.
That's right.
What do you and I do? I know it's easy to turn off the television right now, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to pay attention to when you see things happening at a distance, because they will soon be at our door.
That's right.
Let us avail ourselves to this message from the National Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad, who has been preparing for this part 2 now for a couple of weeks now, and he's ready to give to us this very critical message from the Messiah in our midst, from the divine guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, from the mouth of God to you and I, that we might understand better and do better, so that we don't get washed away in the confusion and the madness that is quickly encircling the world. Hurricanes are happening in the midst of it, tornadoes in the midst of it, fires in the midst of it, cold in the midst of it, drought in the midst of it, murder in the midst of it, and an election in the midst of it. This is nothing to play with. Let us make sure we tune in, we watch and listen for guidance, and that we pray that Allah helps us to get through this time period safely to the other side. And guess what he told us through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
That's right, brother.
That he already gave us a man who could get us safely through.
The other side.
And he would get us safely across on his shoulder.
That's right.
Man, that's something.
Right.
When somebody picks you up on their shoulder, that's a hard position to get out of. When they got you wrapped up like that, there's not. It's hard for you to get out of that. That's how we want to be with Allah. We want him to have us up in that position where we don't feel the water. We don't have to do anything but get and enjoy the ride.
That's
But
right.
let's at least not try to fight our way out of that place of safety. Let's take advantage and make sure that we are not trying to make it difficult for the man who is trying to get us safely across on the other side by wrestling with him. You ever had a nephew or a niece or a child and they were having a fit and you try to pick them up and they're trying to wiggle their way out? We don't want to be like that.
Yes,
Let's,
sir.
let's be
That's
that
right.
good child that understands I want to get out of this danger. Pick me up.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So this is what I implore each of us to do. Let us hear from Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad and get that guidance that is so critical, and that I have to be honest, we can't get it anywhere else today.
No, sir. I concur. Yes, sir.
All praises due to Allah. Thank you, Brother Student Minister Abel.
Beautiful.
Let us go now to our closing announcements. I think we'll be able to make the time a constraint. Brother Minister Abel, you have done a magnificent job once again. Thank you so much, dear brother.
Oh, thank
and
you.
Now to our dear sister Starla Muhammad for her part of the closing announcements.
Yes, sir. I will make it quick so we can make the deadline. Brothers and sisters, visit finalcall.com to make sure you take out a digital subscription of the Final Call newspaper. You can also, when you see the brothers out in your community, get a physical edition of the paper on that very same website. You can visit store.finalcall.com to order the latest messages. We've got messages from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as well as books and other information. And on that very same website again, finalcall.com. If you click Final Call Radio, it will take you to Final Call Radio. So that way you can listen to 24/7 messages and musical excerpts by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And now to you, Student Minister Chad.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, Sister Starla. And once again, for those that are tuning in, whether it's your first, second, or third time, if you would like to know more about the Nation of Islam, to learn more, we want to encourage you that you'll get a chance to go to noi.org/join. All right. And you can fill out a digital application there, and someone will get back in touch with you so you can start the process of orientation by God's grace. Okay. And then we also want to encourage, like Student Minister Abel said, go to your nearest mosque, go to the nearest study group. If you're not able to make it there, please log in to noi.org tomorrow to hear this wonderful lecture by Student Minister Ishmael that's called The Fall of America. Who of the presidential candidates can save the lives of the people of America from the wrath of God, part 2. So make sure you tune in tomorrow for that wonderful lecture, family.
All right. All praises due to Allah. Can we see that flyer, Sister Sheila, real quick?
She don't have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I sent it over to the 901 number, so they might have it there.
All right. Praise be to Allah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we look forward to that. And lastly, and certainly not least, I want to thank our viewing and listening audience. I definitely want to thank those of you who are regular participants in this program. Thank you. Thank you so much. And you have contributed what is most important to us, which is your time and your attention. In addition, I would like to ask if those of you who want to help us in a financial way, as we do have some financial concerns in presenting this broadcast to you, you can do so very easily by going to Cash App at CTG, $CTG broadcast. And that is a Cash App. Those of you who want to use a PayPal, you can go to jkingdom1 at AOL.com. And of course, for those of you who use Zelle, can go to Closing the Gap broadcast at gmail.com. Once again, that's $CTG broadcast for Cash App, jkingdom1 at AOL.com for PayPal, and Closing the Gap broadcast at gmail.com for Zelle. We thank you so much for your continued support.
Yes.
So tune in next week with us when we will have a presentation that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. All praises due to Allah. Thank you, and may Allah continue to bless us all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes.
All right, praise be to Allah.